Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to cover the most common architectural drafting conventions. We'll talk about scale, the alphabet of lines and line weight, and end up with a little discussion about architectural sheets. Starting out with scale. Scale is a tool that we use to represent the relationship between a measurement on the drawing and the actual measurement on the actual object. So when we say a drawing is to scale, it means that each element in that drawing is in the same proportion, related to the actual object. All right, go back to the actual grasshopper here. It's smaller or larger by a particular percentage. Why do we use scale? As architects, it allows us to represent buildings and full-size details, real-life details, to a smaller and more practical size than the original. Your architectural drawings might include a variety of different scales. All right, it's not going to be all the same scale throughout the set, depending on which objects are being depicted and what your goal of that particular drawing is. Here are some of the standard scales that we use to represent our designs. Site plans, typically an 1/8 inch, or could even be smaller. Building floor plans are commonly at a 1/4 inch. Interior plans, kitchen and bath plans, interior design plans often are at a 1/2 inch. Elevations and interior elevations vary. It's fairly typical that they match the floor plan that it corresponds to. And finally, construction details are the ones that vary the most. It depends on the size of the object that you are detailing and what the goal is. They could be at 1 inch equals 1 foot, 1.5 inch equals a foot, or 3 inches equals a foot, and there are even larger scales. All right. On the right, take a look at a sheet of drawings. You can see that multiple different scales are used on this same sheet to depict different parts of the building. Let's move on to talk about the alphabet of lines. As designers, we use different types of lines to depict different kinds of information. The most common one is a solid line, sometimes called an object line, and it's used to delineate form. All right. We can vary its weight, how heavy or thick the line is, to indicate visual depth or hierarchy. Another really common one is a dashed line, sometimes called a hidden line. All right, and you see an example of it here. And that's to indicate form and edges that are important, but they're hidden from our view. Right? Various other line types exist in architectural drafting, and some of them are shown here. Moving on to line weights. Line weight is a communication tool in technical drawing, and it's used to convey information and for ease of readability. How easy is it to instantly to glance at a drawing and instantly understand what's going on? You should use a range of line weights in your drawing. In this particular illustration, this architect is calling them profile, starting with the heaviest one. Profile, heavy, medium, light, and hatch. Now that's 5 different line weights used in one drawing. Pretty much the minimum you should use is 3. 4 is common, 5 is a little bit less common. All right. So here's another look at some of those different line weights, starting with heavy. All right, so this is slightly different terms than the last slide, but a heavy solid line is going to delineate the profiles of plan and section cuts. Those are going to be your heaviest line, and spatial edges. Moving to medium lines, they're going to indicate edges of form and any intersections of plane. Light lines would be maybe a change in material or texture and not a change in the form. And finally, very light lines. They're going to be used to lay out your drawings, establish your grids. These are your guidelines. And you might also use very light lines to show some surface textures. Our last topic here is architectural sheets. We create drawings to communicate our design work and all of the information required to those who are going to build the building. All right. And to do that, we create a set of drawings. And they generally follow a set of conventions. These can vary by the project type, the industry that you're in, and basically your office standards. But let's take a look at a very standard architectural sheet here on the right. You can see that it's typically a rectangle in landscape orientation. You have a larger kind of white space over here on the left because they're typically bound in sets on the left. It's very common to have a title block on the right-hand side, and your drawings would be centered in the middle or spaced evenly throughout the sheet, depending on how many you've got. There are some standard sizes of sheets, including 18 by 24, 24 by 36, and 30 by 42 inches. Talking about those title blocks, it's fairly standard with the larger architectural sheets to have the title block down the right-hand side. Some people put it along the bottom, especially if you're using some of the smaller sheet sizes. Title blocks are going to be your best place to begin reading a set of prints. They hold a lot of basic information, project name, location, architect's name, location, etc. And let's talk about some of the information that we place on these sheets, the lettering and the titles. You're going to have a lot of lettering on an architectural sheet, and the height of the lettering will vary according to a hierarchy of the information being presented. So the most important information is big, and the most detailed information is quite a bit smaller. So starting with maybe the sheet number in your title block, at least ½ inch. All right, it's big. Your main drawing titles will be maybe 1/4 of an inch. You'll have some subtitles slightly smaller. And then your general blocks of information, your notes, your dimensions are typically 3/16 inch. On some of the smaller sheet sizes and in some industries, they go down to 1/8 of an inch. You should not include any lettering less than or smaller than 1/8 of an inch on an architectural sheet. Taking a look on the right, we have an example here. Here is a drawing title. This is drawing number 6. Here is the drawing, the title itself, and here is a subtitle giving us its scale. And this piece here would be the notes for that particular drawing, and you can see that they are quite a bit smaller. Let's finish this topic off by taking a look at several examples of architectural drawing sheets. Here we have a sheet with a title block down the right-hand side, and you can see that it includes multiple different types of drawings at different scales. Our next example, again, title block down the right-hand side. It includes one main drawing. This happens to be a reflected ceiling plan, and then some schedules, notes, and information having to do with that drawing. Finishing up, I wanted to show you one of these smaller sheet sizes with the title block along the bottom. All right, you can see that this is a mechanical and electrical plan of just one room of a bathroom, and it's got the drawing and then a legend for the information along one side. Thanks, everyone. I just gave you a brief introduction to some of the most standard, most common architectural drafting conventions. Hope this is helpful as you move on in this career.